You know, Superman style.
Oh, it's that. I probably was out on that. What are you doing? Stuff is like plugged in underneath. It's probably like IT help.
Yeah.
Kids the other day, it's like, you just plug into what, a power strip, okay. What is that power strip telling me to do? Another power strip, okay. What's that one? Itself, oh, okay. This is.
That's 8.
Give me 500.
I was watching time on the table.
See what? Good.
Speak through your computer.
Can you just tell? Like type for them. I'm not connected to either. Like, oh, but like you can just type it in, right? Yep.
Jen, you gotta help him reach this time.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as they know it's on the table, I just feel like.
I didn't realize he was a big shot, yeah.
Yeah.
They got so back.
Okay, problem solved, everyone. Sorry for that.
More conscious. There you go.
Done, Bob.
She hadn't said that.
The power strip's dead, I'm not sure, but this power strip works, so.
Oh, all right, something simple.
Can you hear us on the phone?
Just one
Oh,
second.
okay, it's up from that. Okay,
Yeah, you're loud and clear over here.
thank you.
All right, sorry for the technical, and we should be good.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. I will call the Fox Hill School Building Committee April 13th to order. Can join via WebEx. The meeting number is 2336-642-9431, and the password is Burlington with a capital B. I think we have a quorum, so our first agenda item is the approval of the March 7th meeting minutes. I have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Monaco,
Abstain.
Dr. Conti,
Yes, aye.
Ms. Kasha,
Aye.
Mr. Cuna,
Aye.
Mr. Sagarino,
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
and I am an I. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, Jen, sorry, Ms. Priest, you're down at the bottom.
Aye.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 1.
Melissa, just a housekeeping question.
Yes.
Does Mr. Brooks automatically come on? You guys have to add him?
No, we have to add him.
Okay.
On the agenda will be next week.
Okay,
Next
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Public comment. We do not have anyone in the room. If anyone, I think there's a few folks on the phone want to speak.
To the chairs, no hands.
All right. We can move to the financial update.
Perfect. Okay, we have 3 invoices for you to review and approve this evening. First being Dorn Whittier's invoice number 6 in the amount of $15,989. Our Dorn Whittier invoice number 6 in the amount of $16,232.50. And then Danisco's invoice number 2 in the amount of $29,500. $545. Does anyone have any questions in regards to the three invoices that are presented tonight?
No hands.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve invoices as submitted.
I will second.
All right, any discussion on the invoices? Great. We got anybody else before I take a vote? No, right? Okay, Ms. Monaco,
Aye.
Dr. Conti,
Aye.
Ms. Kasha,
Aye.
Mr. Cuno,
Aye.
Mr. Sagarino,
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
Ms. Priest,
Aye.
and I am an aye. I believe that is 800. Yep, 800. Thanks.
Mike, do you want to go over the budget breakdown slide? It's up on the screen. If you can see it, but here. Probably better
I
for you
have
to
it
take a
here.
Look at mine.
So I was trying to keep it up on my, so yeah, this is just the monthly budget breakdown. Just shows contracts and expenditures through last meeting. So just want to reiterate, does not include what you just approved today. As you can see in the budget balance, we still have a healthy balance remaining of almost 300,000, non-committed. Does anyone have any questions?
No hands.
Awesome.
All right. So we have two kind of agenda topics, the existing conditions update and the educational program update. And that is where I'm going to turn it over to Danisco to talk through their slides in regards to those two different topics.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone, here and virtually.
That's the video.
I'm
Stop
I know,
moving it.
I got my back, I don't even know where I'm looking. I guess I'm better off not knowing, right, Bob, where the camera is?
Keep on your toes.
You need one of those that's in the ceiling, just
Yeah,
bubbles
that's
around,
right.
just talking. Yeah.
We need some attendance, so we know what's going
Yeah,
on.
fair
There
enough.
you go. But anyway, we're, if you want to just go to the next slide, Christina, we're really just wanting to bring everyone up to speed what we've been doing over the past month or so. Part of what we want to just kind of bring everyone up to speed on, our partner MSBA has, certain protocols and processes that we have to have in place. We're in the preliminary design program. So we just want to kind of set expectations on what we're doing at this phase, because a lot of it's more fact finding and getting input and understanding where we are. No decisions are going to be made, which is really important for everyone to understand, unless there may be some people that may think it's not a good idea to repair the existing building. So there may be one or two things that we can remove, but for the most part, a lot of this is fact finding and understanding. We'll go through the process, give you a little bit of a teaser on what we've been doing as far as visioning. We've had a couple of great meetings, but tonight we have the community visioning session. Hopefully all of you can stay, because it would be fun to understand some of your thoughts and ideas. Give you a quick update on the educational program, where we are today, the ed program and the space summary, or the spaces required to support the ed program, kind of go hand in hand. So just trying to establish for people to understand the size of the building or buildings, if it's one or two schools, and then just give you an update on some of the additional information that we've gathered over the last month for existing conditions, mostly site. So no further ado. So we are in the preliminary design program with MSBA. You're going to hear all kinds of acronyms. Please ask us to explain what those are if we just start rattling off crazy. This is called the PDP. This is where we really get into understanding the educational program, both for Fox Hill and for the entire district. MSBA wants to know everything that's going on in your district, and also to identify the spaces required to support your educational program. We talk about the existing conditions, we document it all, so MSBA understands the strengths, the weaknesses, the challenges with the existing site and building. And then as part of our visioning process, we'd like to establish some design parameters. And then we'll develop and evaluate alternatives. But we, again, other than maybe a repair that we all can probably say is not the best and highest use for that building, that we don't have to dismiss any options on the table at this point. And so if we get into the educational program, for the educational program, we really focus on identifying the special education programs that are offered district-wide. We are looking at 2 enrollments. One is Fox Hill only and a Fox Hill Pine Glen school. So we want to make sure that we identify and understand the programs that would be offered in the combined school. And we can talk a little bit more about that. It's important to understand spatial relationships and adjacencies so that we can understand the layouts, the footprint, how the building can be organized as we start thinking about traffic, how you arrive on site, what does the site look like, the adjacencies both from the interior to the exterior for educational purposes as well as community use. And then again, the program does define the space needs, which then informs of the total square footage of the project, whether it's Fox Hill or a combined Fox Hill Pine Glen school. So with that, just sharing a little bit about the educational priorities, we've had 2 kind of leadership visioning sessions with the district or central office and the principals, and we've also had fun interactive conversations with both staff at Fox Hill and Pine Glen. So we're having fun, they're getting excited. We've talked about what some of their priorities are. I don't want to go through it because I'm going to ruin David Stephen, who's our vision, who's our ed planner. He's going to kind of give everyone an update of what we've learned so far. But suffice to say, we've had some great and very similar educational priorities. And then the next slide would be our architectural priorities and what people feel are important to them as we start thinking about the design of a new school. And we'll be getting into those. You can just go. I don't want to ruin his thunder. He'll say I'm a buzzkill if I do that.
Keep going.
And so we'll be getting into that a little bit more at 7 o'clock. So I hope you can all stay. So when I start talking about whether it's going to be just the Fox Hill School or combined Fox Hill Pine Glen School, we have a enrollment agreement with the MSBA to study 2 enrollments. One would be for 325 students and one would be for 640 students. So what we do is we start really high level, understanding how many general education classrooms or homeroom classrooms are required for the school. So this is kind of a snapshot of how we arrive at those classrooms. What we know is that your class size policy is not to exceed 18 students in a classroom, right? So whether that's in kindergarten or 5th grade, and that's really important to your district. So when you look at a school for 325 students, you'll see that we need 3 classrooms per grade for a total of 18 general education or homeroom classrooms. When you look at a combined school for 640 students, you take the same, math, and then you arrive at 6 classrooms per grade. So that is kind of the fundamental basis of how many, how big is the school going to be, but that's only part of the conversation. So when you go to the next slide, this is the overall square footage program requirements. You'll see in the first column, you have the different programs that are outlined under core academic, which includes more than just general classrooms, right? It includes your lit specialist, your math specialist, your English language learner program, all of the tutors that you have, science, tech, and engineering classrooms that can also be included into the program. So what you'll see, the first column is what you currently have at Fox Hill. This is for 325 students. What you currently have at Fox Hill, what the actual needs are for a 3-section school, 3 classrooms per grade.
Can I ask you a
Yes,
question?
yes.
How many students are at Fox Hill School right now?
I was saying
440.
450.
And we're going to build a school for 325?
Yep, so, and what I'll do is actually provide that for the next one. But this is based on the enrollment forecasting that was agreed to with MSBA, and we've confirmed it. Actually, this isn't for today. This is actually bringing you out to 2028. And so you'll see that there's a slight decrease across the district for actually over 10 years. And what we've done is, there was a huge exercise during the eligibility period where you showed the floor plans, how many general classrooms you have in each of the schools, which then demonstrates your availability or capacity at each of the schools, which then said, okay, this is how many classrooms would be required at Fox Hill if we redid it. There would be a reduction in enrollment across all the schools, and then there would probably have to be some form of redistricting, but the number of students are decreasing across the district. I think it was arriving at 1,590 students is the total number
I have it
for
written down.
all of, for
1592.
14, yeah. How much was that?
1592
1592 for the
versus
entire,
1629 today.
and it's, what is it now?
1629,
1629. So,
it's a net loss of 30.
so it's really not that much, but what we're finding is if you take the 18 students per classroom, for example, Pine Glen is operating, I think, at 13 students per classroom. So MSBA is saying, this is great, we want to support you, but you have capacity at some of your other schools. So everyone acknowledges that redistricting is extremely challenging. But they're saying that to participate, if you have capacity in your other schools, this is what we'll design the school to be. And I have a whole chart, and I'm happy to actually append to this.
Catherine has her hand.
If you have a quick moment, we have a hand raised.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
Catherine. Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
so not used
Yeah.
to this.
Yeah, so again, I remembered that they were talking about reduction in our student population, and so I still have a concern with that. Again, we're 7 years out. We have a lot of new homes being built. I truly believe in those new homes, we'll start to have new families, and we're going to have all these kids that are going to go into a school that's going to be too small, and redistricting is not going to answer or fix that problem. So what do we do when we start, we get closer to building this and we all of a sudden find out we're going to have this huge increase in students? Are we allowed to change the plan to have a bigger school? I mean, how are they going to handle that?
So it's twofold. One is designing flexibility into your school. And so you want to make sure that there are, the way the school is designed, that can support maybe an additional, for a bubble class that goes through the system, that you can support instead of, for example, this 325 students or 3 classrooms per grade, that you can actually accommodate a 4th one. We also will look at where the building could be expanded. That's also part of the process, is making sure that any design will allow for future expansion of a building. I will say that I don't think I've ever been in a situation working with MSBA, and we've been working with them since their inception, that they've actually been wrong.
It's
Like-
always the first time.
I know. But what I'm saying is, it's not their intent is not that you're overcrowded day one. Like that would be bad for them and certainly horrible for you after this huge investment. So,
Does anyone recall how quickly we outgrew Memorial after it was built?
Day one.
Right. So that's our concern.
yeah. The other consideration would be to have a conversation with MSBA and see if we could add a few classrooms. And if they won't reimburse you for it, but they'll allow it, right?
We can pay for it. There's one other thing. Let's say you have the 300 and pick a number, but I doubt it's 25. They're not all going to be evenly distributed so that you can put 18 kids in a classroom. You're gonna have 26 in one and 12 in another. I mean,
Right. This is math, right? This is straight math and understanding that. So, it's hard to predict, you are gonna have grades that are gonna be larger than typical that will come through. I think, was it Robin was saying that, kindergarten is up this year?
It was down
It was down?
Current kindergarten is down significantly, but it's back to normal, I believe, this
Yeah.
year.
it's gonna grow.
Yeah.
Got
So,
another hand raised,
Yeah.
Jeremy, before you lose your train of thought, maybe you can interject
Go
here
ahead.
for a minute.
Yeah, so I think to Ms. Bond's point, I think the question we're all asking is there a preliminary design review phase? Is there a CDR phase where if during this 7-year process, we see an increase, we can inject the classrooms and then MSBA reimburses us? Is there cutoffs or gates during the process where we can do that and increase the size without any kind of penalty or additional cost to the town?
I am going to be, the bad person here. The answer is no. So, if there's, MSBA is going to agree to 325, I'm confident that they'll accept the low class size number of 18. We've gotten that far, and they've used that when they've looked at your capacity at all of the schools. So, if you would like to increase the number of classrooms, now would be the time to be having that conversation. We certainly don't want to be all the way into down the road in design to all of a sudden say, oh geez, now we need to add 3 or 4 more classrooms. That would delay probably everything, but MSBA won't share in that cost. So did you?
Finish your thought.
So the only way that if there's a major concern to come out of feasibility study, go back into eligibility period, renegotiate with them. But we've had that happen to us before where a community was like, we signed it, we shouldn't have signed it, we want to go back. They go back into eligibility period. And I think they got 25 more students and they lost over 6 months. So you have to be voted back into eligibility period at a board meeting. Then you have to start the conversation all over again with them. You come to an agreement and then you have to go back to a board meeting to get it approved. So
We need more classrooms. And if we need to have the conversation, now's the time.
Correct.
Because we need more
Yeah.
classrooms.
I also think that's why the next slide is on the table where you get 6 classrooms per grade with the 640 student enrollment.
So Donna, I don't think everyone was a part of the process because it was now a couple of years ago. But the MSBA moved Burlington into their potential pipeline. And in order for us to move forward, and I don't exactly remember all the phases, I'm sorry, but the MSBA board has to approve of certain things as we go. One of the things that the community had to sign off on was their enrollment projections. We can't use our own, we have to use MSBA's.
But they're wrong.
That could very well be true, but we still have to use theirs, even if they're wrong, if you want their board to support us financially. So they initially only approved the 640 combined school. They only said MSBA will only be a partner with Burlington if you combine both schools, because we are projecting your enrollment to decline. And even at 18, you have additional capacity. because we're talking about, again, at 2027, you'll have whatever it is, 150 fewer, 100 fewer elementary students. School committee member Murphy and myself at the time, I believe he was chair, I have to put all the timelines together, called, made an appointment with MSBA. We spoke to Jack McCarthy, and we said the community committee at that point was uncomfortable with only agreeing to a combined 640 student elementary school. And I think we were discussing at the time, doesn't even make sense for us to continue. They went back and I think they added a few more students, and they talked about the 18-to-1 student ratios. And then at that point, they allowed us to have two options, a combined school option and a 300 and whatever it is, 25 student option that we could move forward with. So what their board voted, the MSBA board voted, was we could continue in the process, have access to their resources, those two options, which is why the two options are here now. So we did ask that the initial approval was for one school. We did go back and ask for an approval for two schools. And then because we have to use their enrollment projections, in order for us to maintain a 4-school elementary model, and I think continue working with the MSBA or their reimbursement is only going to be based on the 325 students. So Donna, I would say is we've already gone back and petitioned. I think if we go back and petition again, we can always do that, but we've already done that once and got the options expanded from one option to two. And now that's why you're exploring both, because of that option. And I think you also have to explore both options on both sites. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So,
We don't have to take that very far, but yes.
so again, that's why the MSBA board approved Burlington's project and moved us to the next phase. And Donna, I'm sorry, I don't remember what that phase is called.
We're in feasibility now.
But then we hired the OPM, and then we've hired the designer. So we did go back and question MSBA. Jack McCarthy, I name dropped him. He's the executive director of MSBA. He would be the one who would allow us to move forward or not move forward. So again, the reason that you're even looking at a 325 student option or potential is because that was MSBA's sort of counter offer for us to continue to partner with them. So that's kind of the
Yeah, and I
history
think,
of this.
Dr. Condi, you did go and you showed all of the developments that were coming up within the town, right? I mean, some of them might not have had permits at the time, or they might not have been further along, but they don't.
It's rebuilt.
They-
It's not new development.
Yeah.
It's all the old houses getting pulled down.
I
The
see.
great big ones are getting put up, and it's like
Lots
all
of
over town.
kids.
Lots of.
Lots of kids, yeah. So I know, they do look at birth rates, they look at, I mean, it's quite an involved analysis for enrollment. And so it's in migration, it's, they look at who leaves, who comes in.
And
Because
it's not even just the 2028 enrollment. The 2028 enrollment they project is actually lower than what they allow us.
correct. So what they actually do is they take your enrollment through 10 years. So this must have occurred in 2022. So they actually have the enrollment going through 2032, and then they take the average of the 10 years. So they're actually, in their minds, saying that they're giving you a higher enrollment than what you should be having when you open the school in, say, 2028. So that it's an really in-depth evaluation of
And then the other thing we asked them, because we said if we do a combined school, which would be, again, 6 homerooms, do we have to tear down the Pine Glen school? Could we continue to use the Pine Glen school or repurpose the Pine Glen school? And I, again, got a bunch of different answers. I don't think anyone would say you can continue to use the Pine Glen school however you want. That's not what they said, but they said their focus would be on the new building. They said if we needed to repurpose the Pine Glen school, they really wouldn't. It's not their business what the town does. I think they would probably not look too favorably if we kept the Pine Glen open as a K-5 school exactly as it works now. But we could use the Pine Glen school for swing space. We could use it for an early childhood center. There'd be other ways for us to continue to use the Pine Glen school. Again, there wasn't an obligation that we tear down the Pine Glen school if we utilize the number. But I think they also said, though, if we don't tear it down, we couldn't go back to them. And if we ever did ask them for reimbursement money for tearing the building down, obviously, if we build on the Fox Hill site, then I believe the demolition of the building is part of the
The Fox Hills.
the Fox Hill site. So again, that's where all of our resources would be
Right.
would be focused. So
Yeah.
we asked all those questions. We did ask them to relook at their enrollment projections, consider them different ways. We did ask about the schools. We really pushed them to try to get that 325 up to at least 400. We felt we needed at least a 400 student elementary school and at least a 4 to 5 section elementary school, sort of a memorial size. If I'm sort of painting that picture, and they did not, they didn't agree. So again, we can go back and try again. I think their enrollments have tracked since we've had that conversation a couple years ago. Their enrollments have been, their projections have been accurate. So I don't even think we have that to go back and argue with them.
Right. So unless there's some significant new development that might be in town or you're aware of something. But I agree with you, Dr. Conti. I believe they have even stated as much as that their program isn't for everyone. But I think, again, we went through this with another district. It really set them back and they got 25 more students across for the entire school. So that's 5 kids per grade, right? Think about it. So delaying it isn't always the solution or going back. So alternatively, a question could be, could we add a few classrooms on our own dime, right? Maybe not 1 per grade that, we can certainly ask whatever it is that we feel is appropriate. Maybe 3, so you've got enough for a bubble, like 3 grades that are bubble, or even if you want to go as high as additional 6 classrooms, we can certainly ask that. Then you start getting into, all of the other spaces. Are those adequately sized? Because that plays those have some implications to it as well, right? But dining, media center, your admin suite, your medical, all of those are predicated on, a number of students that will be enrolled. So some of the spaces might be slightly undersized. So do we increase those to accommodate an enrollment that you're more comfortable with? And then, again, we want to make sure that we are right sizing all of the spaces, not just for the students' homeroom. So
Do they, just a quick question, is you're talking about like the dining space and whatever. And again, I'm sure they realize that, again, population goes up and down and student population will go up and down, and a school's gonna be there a lot longer than 7 years, right? And what if, right, the population goes up? Do they build in or calculate in like extra space in the dining center, for example, for there to be a slight increase, like say to 400 students, or what's their algorithm for that?
Yeah, they actually will take your student population, and for the cafeteria, for example, they will say, we'll take it, your student population and give you a cafeteria that could accommodate 2 sections of dining, right? So for half of your school. That's quite large. And I don't think any of our clients or districts that we've worked with has ever had half the school dine at the same time. So what we typically do is say, okay, this is great. We'll take as large of a cafeteria as you'll give us, but you end up having maybe 3 sections for lunch, right? You'll have 2 grades at a time go in. And then even then, we're even hearing some of our clients are like, we're only going to do 1 grade at a time just for managing very excited and loud students. So they try to give you a buffer on that, recognizing that I don't think there's many communities that actually use the dining as three grades eating at one time, right? So there is some buffer in some of that. The gym wouldn't be modified because the gym's large enough that you could have 2 sections simultaneously. Art and music, once you get over 500 students, you then start needing a second art, a second music for scheduling purposes, which is shown in the next slide, actually, for 640 students. But I think for the most part, the other spaces, the sweet spot somewhere around 500. From a scheduling perspective, that's when you really start to need extra space to accommodate all of the classes that would occur.
If we have an opportunity to request extra classrooms, even at our own dime, when would that be? Is it now?
Yeah, as part of the, well, we can informally ask,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
We can informally ask. As part of the preliminary design program, which is what we'll really focus on the educational program, and then here are our space needs.
I
Right?
would certainly be in favor of doing that.
Right. And then my next question is kind of, again, a little outside of the box, but for the medical admin space, with the increase in students who are needing mental health counseling, are they changing the model at all to include space to be able to accommodate those needs as well? Because I'm not sure you want to have that in the nurse's office per se.
They allot a certain amount of space, and how you use it is really up to the district. We have been able, under medical and admin, we do have an SEL coach included in that, a social emotional person already included in that without exceeding, or actually, what is that? This one says it exceeds it by 300 square feet or whatever. And you can add additional support space again at your own expense, but they will allow that. I'm looking at you here. I should be looking at you here. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. No, thank you very much. Yep.
Yeah, if I could just chime in real quick, just about the MSBA's process. Donna mentioned she's been working with Danisco, their team with the MSBA for quite some time, as well as the Dorn Whittier team since the moratorium was lifted back in whenever that was, 2007, 2008. And Dr. Connie, thanks for running through your kind of learning experience and conversation with Jack McCarthy. The decision, to reevaluate the enrollment is the town's decision. But I think, between, Danisco and ourselves, I think the risk there of being completely taken out of the program for a relatively small amount of enrollment increase that would, if at all, be possible, is probably not worth that risk, just given the time lost. But it's a critical decision. It is the town's alone. We'll be more than happy to counsel you on that, give you all the information, our experience with that, and you can take that and make a decision between the school committee or whoever is, the governing body to make that decision. But I really do feel like the risk there is pretty high that we'll lose more time, i.e. money through the process going through that for a relatively low potential increase in student population / enrollment. The way I look at the MSBA program, a lot of times it kind of feels like there's this kind of juxtaposition with the MSBA, like it's kind of us versus them, or it's confrontational in some points. And it's the way I view it and the way I try to counsel folks that are unfamiliar with the program. Fresh look is that they see, it's a partnership, it's an investment. And so they have worked with the town of Burlington in the past. They see that there's, the value in the educational program and delivery and the investment that the town makes alone without the MSBA. So they see the town as a valuable partner. And regardless of whether, regardless what the final enrollment is, whether there's classrooms on the town's dime that's not going to be participated by the MSBA, kind of look at their grant amount is set. They've got to spread the grant money around to many towns, many districts throughout the state. Unfortunately, the dollar is just being stretched so thin these days that a dollar just doesn't go as far as it used to. And I think they're feeling a lot of political and social pressure from communities throughout the state to try to increase that enrollment, and they're doing the best they can. But I do try to just let folks know that it's an investment. They see themselves as a partner working with the town, and they want to try to maximize that investment as much as possible. And I think they just start to see a little bit of risk where if they say yes to an increased enrollment contrary to their data and their findings, then they'll probably find many other towns and districts attempt the same thing, and they just don't see that as a worthy investment. Whether, I think Danya said, the bad person in the room, it's just that kind of their program. So I think there's a really good shot that they'll entertain additional classrooms, albeit outside of the MSBA's grant, i.e. on the town's dime, especially for classroom space and support space that you desperately need. If there's a few things categorically they just won't participate in and actually risk losing you from the program altogether, or kicking you out if it's one of those types of spaces, pools, field houses, et cetera. They just don't see that as a really strong educational investment. So I think the possibility is quite high. We can informally ask and have that conversation, get a read. But I do think at this point, all options to exhaust any additional enrollment through the town. Donna, I know you took an extra look with the enrollment figures and things that happened during the eligibility period. I really think at this point that's kind of been exhausted, and we've got the best we can right now.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. And I do recall the process that Dr. Conti went through, and he described it correctly.
It's exhaustive, right? Like it's, but they have a really solid formula, and I don't know what occurred at Memorial other than another district actually with Memorial. I think there was like 4 of them at the time that we were working with Middleton, and it I think had started under the old SBA program, and then MSBA accepted it at that point. So those schools didn't even really follow MSBA's model. It was kind of left over from the old SBA program. But so I'm not sure what happened at Memorial, and that
Enrollment projections were low.
yeah, and that was probably through NESDEC or whatever, because at that point MSBA wasn't involved. But that's okay. I think they've mastered this enrollment, and I know that you went back and forth multiple times and really have pushed as hard as you could and demonstrated everything that's going on in the town, and the end result is this is what they're comfortable with.
So how do we go about asking?
So we'll go ahead and just confirm that they're comfortable, or if it would be okay. We'll see if there's an
To
upper
add
limit
classrooms
to
on
add
the town
classrooms.
dime.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there may be some other spaces as well, like we said. maybe under administrative, they see social and emotional support and all of those spaces as administrative, just like guidance is and some other support that isn't directly related to the academics for right or for wrong, trust me. So we'll see, just confirming that if we exceed the square footage in some of these other categories for right reasons, of course, that they would allow, they would accept those, of course, not participate financially in them. But yeah, it's, so we'll go ahead and reach out to them. I think just to echo what Dr. Conti was saying is, and I know this is still a major if and discussion, if you combine the two schools, that MSBA has said, we don't care what you do with Pine Glen. We just don't expect those kids to still be in Pine Glen when you open this combined school. But you could use it for swing, you could use it for other purposes. You do not have to give them a definitive, this is what we're gonna do with it now. No community knows what they're gonna do with the building now for 2028 and beyond, right? There's probably many needs, a lot of things that need to be vetted. So that too could be, you know, another resource if the enrollment projections are that off. Because, but, you know, you have to, a lot of those conversations would need to be made and had long before we open the building, right? If there's redistricting that needs to go down, if the enrollment continues to decrease, you are gonna have to look at where do all the students go in your existing facilities, and those, obviously, those conversations need to happen years in advance, but so we'll go ahead and ask, we'll ask about a classroom for grade, that, you know, if would certainly provide a large buffer, if that's everyone's preference.
If we can't get a classroom per grade, maybe we could get 5 or 4, or
Right.
10,
Right.
whatever, you know,
Sure.
let's at least find out.
Sure. So if we go to the next space summary, this space summary is put together based upon a 2-school concept. This would be, there's, you know, we've had conversations, okay, if we merge the 2 schools, do they become one? Do they keep their own identities and just share the core facilities, which we've done with other communities? They literally would have 2 separate entrances, 2 separate names. They could have 2 administration, 2 nurse, 2 everything, and then just share the core, because there's a lot of space in the core that you could maximize using for shared. And we're going to go take a look at a district in school in Springfield that has done this concept that's been very successful. They're actually doing it again, but based on a 2-school concept with 640 students, what you'll see is the square footage, of course, incrementally goes up, but there is some economies of scale that you receive in art, music, health, media center, and dining that really is sufficient to support 640 students. Each school could have an art room, each school has a music, each school has a science, tech, engineering space. They could literally be identical, with the difference being your special ed programs, whether it's lab or the DSC program, and each of the spaces. And what you'll see, which really stands out to us, is the special education requirements that you have, and you should be commended for providing these services for these students. It's wonderful. MSBA has never said no to any special ed. So what you'll see, there's a column that says differences, and MSBA has never said no to those. DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, actually reviews and approves your special education spaces and your programs. And their focus is to make sure that those spaces are equitable, have the same size as core academic or general classrooms, and they just want to make sure there's equity. So you'll see that there is a significantly larger program requirements in comparison to MSBA guidelines, but we feel very confident that that would never be an issue.
Don't we have that with one school as well for the special education? Don't we have?
We do. You
incremental
have
space?
less. Yep. If you go back one, if it's just Fox Hill,
Uh-huh.
it is the collaborative, the lab collaborative.
That's
Is
all?
that it's significant.
There's no
the-
district program at Fox Hill.
And you're not planning on moving any to Fox Hill?
We possibly could move to Fox Hill, but with the enroll, and then Pine Glen enrollment would be about 150 students, given their projection.
Okay.
So
I hear you.
again, they could, so, no, I mean, I think we could look at expanding the, special education classroom space, but then we would need to move the program. And we may want to do that.
Yeah. We may-
So
we may want to move the preschool.
we want to move the preschool.
Sorry
And
to
that,
interrupt.
no, that's your conversation, absolutely.
Would they don't reimburse preschool space?
It depends. Sometimes they will.
Because it's really crowded and in a tight spot.
Where is it currently located?
High school.
Oh, at
Wing
the
down.
It's in a wing just like this one. So it's sort of.
Let's,
smushed in.
we can just, I can get the information from you.
Yep.
If it's, yeah, let's just talk. So it depends. I think what they say is if it was part of the SOI, they would consider it, statement of interest, they would consider it. But we can certainly talk to them about it.
Mhm.
So when you see, if you look at, if you just go back one more slide, sorry, Christina. You'll see under the special education column that, you're looking for 11,000 square feet for a special education just for the programs that are currently at Fox Hill, which is significant. I mean, a lot of it's the lab. And I believe there's one classroom that's occurring over at Memorial that would be brought over. So that actually frees up another classroom at Memorial. But so that all the entire collaborative, all of those students could be in one location. So then, and just, I think if you go to the third slide,
Mhm.
all right, so all of this being equal, prior to these conversations, and we could certainly go back and advocate and request for additional space, regardless of who pays for it, right? We can certainly have that conversation with them. What you'll see when you're looking at it side by side, and it's more to the point that, for 325 students, you're looking at approximately 85,000 square feet of space. When you're looking at 640 students, it's about 100 and, I'll round up, 150,000 square feet of space. So you start to realize economies of scale that really help financially and space on the site, because we'll be building regardless of which size, right, on an existing occupied school site.
The only
So-
problem, I mean, this sounds great and all, if you could do it at the Pine Glen site where it's on a main road, it would make a lot of sense. But to put it where Fox Hill School is currently, deep in a neighborhood with two roads going into it, where the traffic is already bad. And not just traffic wise, the impact on the neighborhood is actually, in my opinion, a non-starter. It's just, I don't believe that the people of Burlington will support this.
We're in the process of, we've done a existing conditions traffic analysis. already, which has outlined, what's currently existing
Which is
there.
really bad right now.
And we're waiting for that. We have that, it's just existing. And then what they do is they're gonna go back out, they'll actually do traffic counts, they'll put the readers on the roads to actually get actual counts, and then they'll be able to look at it and say, in this type of condition, a very residential, small road, is this congestion good, bad, or, fail? It's literally a grading scale of A through F. Some of you probably are
It's
very
bad as it
familiar
is
with it,
currently,
right?
to add any more to
So-
it would be.
Yeah,
awful.
so they'll help us analyze that
Mhm.
and see what, if that it could be supported or not.
I get Ed's hand up.
Yeah.
Have we looked to see if we have any comparable data on Wynn Street by Memorial and the middle school, or by the high school, or even Francis Wyman, just so that we have a baseline of displeasure with traffic?
It's night and day between main roads and those quiet neighborhood streets.
But isn't Fox Hill
Uh,
considered like a gateway street anyways, because it leads into that neighborhood residential area? My street's considered a gateway, connects to another town. So even though it's not a major roadway like 62 or Wynn Street, it's still considered a highly traveled roadway.
We can maybe work with your engineering department or DPW, or whoever, and see what kind of information we can have, and then compare it to what is occurring at the other schools.
The other schools,
John has, Catherine had her hand up first.
the other schools are all on main roads.
Right. No, but here's the question I am asking. If you combine the two schools, it's not just going to be the current traffic we have. You're going to have to look at you have to analyze how many people are driving to Pine Glen as well, because you're going to have that many more cars. You know what I'm saying? It's not just Fox Hill traffic, it's combined traffic of the two schools that are now going to go down those two streets. And we need to make sure we're analyzing it correctly.
Yeah, understood. We would be looking at the dual enrollment as well. Yep.
When we have that information.
Thank you.
They're trying to mobilize, so I'm not sure. We're trying to mobilize them and get their equipment out there.
John has a hand up too.
Yeah, thank you. When they do the study, do they consider things like staggering the start times in a combined school?
We can set the parameters. I think, we can have that conversation to see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. I think it would be, what would probably make sense is just for full transparency is to say this is, the amount of additional traffic that would be generated for a two-school option. Is it palatable? Is it, just doable? If it's not, are there ways to accommodate this type of additional traffic through? We've been in communities that have said, let's talk about different start times or whatever, right? The two schools are, as a crow flies, are about a mile apart from each other. I don't, talk about busing, like we'd have to have a conversation about if this was a combined school, would we be able to encourage more people taking the bus if that would help, right? So there's all kinds of permutations that can occur once we obtain the actual data. And they will project out, they will actually say, okay, in 2028, we're projecting Burlington's traffic to increase due to all of the additional development or whatever is going on. Like that too is a really good science that they have. That will say, okay, if you're currently a level C, projecting out to 2028, you could be a B, you could be a C, you could be a D, you could be an F. And so they'll actually really do a really good job in forecasting based on what is known about the future buildable
Yeah.
and usable area.
We have a existing safe route to school traffic study from Fox Hill as well, and I will note one of the things, the biggest concern there, because someone also backed me up, is the idling at drop off and pickup, which would be eliminated in any school configuration with the addition, with the traffic flow changes and get those idling cars off of Fox Hill and Westwood, so that would be mitigated in both scenarios. Jeremy, I see you.
Yeah, the only thing else, I just looked at a map real quick too. So another point to the conversation is if you talk about the Pine Glen being on a main road, it's a quarter mile from the intersection of Cambridge Street to the entrance of Pine Glen. So if you dump all that traffic in there, you're exacerbating the same problem in a different area. So just food for thought.
Yeah, just real quick on the traffic study and kind of relating it to the whole process. The idea is to not get a traffic analysis and kind of shoehorn it into, into an option and tell you things that you don't already know. It's really just a data point. And so, that's why they call it feasibility study. And so that's just one data point. And I think maybe we mentioned earlier in a meeting, one of the tools we use is this criteria matrix, just to kind of put it full circle into the whole process. And we're still a little bit early, but we're getting pretty close. The traffic is going to be one, or maybe depending on how we slice the information, one kind of data point on that criteria matrix, whether it's volume or in all the different potential options combined, solo, Pine Glen site, Fox Hill site. And so it might very well tell us something really valuable that, it's going to take either a significant investment or just not possible, or without certain other pains that are going to affect the project some other way, whether it's funneling traffic in, access, drop off, the bus loop. It kind of gets, it's just one of those knobs or levers that kind of gets fine tuned or put into the equation to help us kind of lead us towards a preferred option. So, Don, I don't know if you have anything more to talk about, that criteria matrix, but certainly once we get some of that data back, it's going to be put into that full equation.
Yeah, no, I'm just realizing it's 7:00.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, do you see David Stephen?
I saw him on there.
Yeah. Okay,
Can
John.
you just?
I'm here, Donna.
Thank
Okay.
you.
John Denizio, is your hand up or is it just left over?
David,
He's
we'll
good.
be right with you.
Okay.
We're still wrapping this
All
up.
right.
No worries.
Do you want to save the rest for next time or go? quick?
I think primarily those were the really big points. I think it would be helpful if you could just go to the last slide. There you go. Do you want to?
Yes, so we have had a survey completed. They're working on finalizing the drawing itself. But with the preliminary information, what we are finding, what we've done, our wetlands consultant has been out, they flagged the wetland, and based on the flags, the surveyor put it on the drawing, and based on that, the areas that are identified in blue are the existing wetlands on and around the site. So what that tells us is that, wetlands and vernal pool, which is on the right-hand side of the drawing, they're very strict restrictions as to how close you can build. So with this information, we know that the wetlands, which is to the north, close to the Wilmington, actually across the Wilmington line and on our site, and the area to the west also, those are wetland. We can build up to 50 feet from that blue wetland line. Beyond that is a no build. We could develop, play areas, we could plant up to 20 feet, but no closer than 50 for building. So that really kind of limits us as to where we can build. So with this information, hand in hand with the program, because the program is really important with space summary in defining how large a building we're trying to place on the site. I think we have enough information. We can be starting to look at what a single 325 student school might look like footprint wise on the site versus a two school 640 student building might look like. So Not all is lost on the right-hand side of the existing school. There are ways we could kind of manipulate the shape of the building to work around the site. So that's kind of a little bit of the fun that we're gonna have now moving forward.
Yeah.
Sorry, all of those sites right now currently are in the woods.
Yeah.
Not on the developed land, correct?
All of the
wet-
All
wetlands,
of the wetlands on this picture.
yes, but the buffer areas are actually in the developed areas. So that actually helps us with the vernal pool because it's typically there's like a 200 no bill zone, but because it's already developed, it's like the outfield of the softball field.
Right.
There may be, it depends on the local conservation commission, right? When we go before them, we'll talk about, they'll let us know what we can and can't do.
Catherine, you have a question?
Well, I kind of did. I mean, then Bob said something that most of it, the wetlands were in the woods. I just know that when some homes have been built around here, people have relocated wetlands to make it equivalent to the space they were going to build on. And I don't know if that's even a possibility. I mean, it doesn't sound that way based on what Bob said, but I was just trying to think a little outside the box too, if it's restricting where we're placing the building.
There potentially could be wetland replication opportunities, but again, I think we'll know better when our next step now is to go before Concom with an ANRAD, for them to agree with the wetland flagging. And at that point, we'll know a little bit more about what we can and can't do specifically within these areas. But I would say you can't really do much with the vernal pool area, but with the wetland, there might be an opportunity to do some application.
And that's typically, not DEP regs are 10,000 square feet, I think, right?
Five, I think.
Five,
I
and
think
then you
it's
have to
5,000.
double it as 10.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Thank you.
sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay, we can skip the rest.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're late.
It's all right. So we're just gonna turn it over to David Stevens to go through the visioning.
Do we have community members on?
Bob, you have the.
A lot of people.
There's a couple
So,
of parents.
1, 2,
Awesome.
3, 4, 5. I see 5 at least. 6.
And then hopefully everyone
7.
here can stay and participate. That would be awesome. Hi.
Did you participate?
Most of everyone.
Okay.
Or is there no reason?
Yeah, no, sure. Melissa, is it okay to invite? Sure, come on up.
You just need your phone.
Cheers.
Yep, just need your
I don't
phone.
know, 2
Not
minutes,
here.
1
Right. And if you bring your phone, it's actually, phones are allowed. Phones are encouraged, but are not.
You're rearranging, just, I don't know if some folks are limited by time. It sounds like this is going to be all part of the building committee meeting, which is open, so just want to keep track of quorum numbers, just in case we start to get a little close. So we don't leave the meeting open.
Oh.
I
How
think-
many, how many's the quorum? 7?
7.
1, 2, 3. So we had 8. I think 9 once Catherine joined. So if anyone from the school committee, the building committee needs to leave, just message the WebEx, please. This is still a school building committee meeting.
Because you have a quorum.
Oh, Paul did leave. Okay, so yeah.
We still have 7.
Did John, did
Denise
Vizio
left.
stay on?
Oh, he
No,
left.
he left too.
So
Catherine
Catherine
did
and
too.
Ed.
No, Catherine's there.
That's what I'm saying, Catherine and Ed.
Ed's
are on
not
that.
voting.
Not voting, but he's a member.
That doesn't matter.
I think it's voting members.
Got it.
So I'll do another checklist here. Me. Catherine, Chris. Did Eric say? Anything? Did he leave? Oh, Nicole.
I think she might have left as
She
well.
left. Okay. So what do we do?
If we do no longer have a quorum, then we should close out the meeting, adjourn the meeting, and then we can then continue with the visioning session.
Okay.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Now we'll continue with the visioning.
Yes.
All right, we're just gonna jump right in. For those of you who don't know, my name's Donna Danisco with Danisco Design. I have Vivian Lowe, Neil Harrigan, and we have our owner's project manager, virtual and in person, Christina Delangelo, Mike Cox, Steve Brown. Virtually, I'm not sure who else is here, but more importantly, our educational planner, David Stephen, is here with us this evening. And David is going to lead us through this visioning session so that we can hear what's important to you, your vision, your aspirations, your goals. And I'm just going to stop talking, let David just take over.
All right, thanks, Donna, and good evening, everybody. So, just to let people know, I've got about an hour and 15 minutes of a sort of interactive presentation that is for the purpose of sharing with people some of the information that we've been gathering thus far, but also making sure that folks in the SBC and the community have an opportunity to weigh in as well. With their ideas. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. And okay. Can you see that okay there?
Yes.
All right, great. As Donna said, telephones are encouraged as well as laptops because we're going to be using an interactive platform called Mentimeter to give feedback and to collect information. And so when we get to that, I'll let you know how to do it and make sure that everybody's getting on okay. But I wanted to do a bit of an overview of visioning and then do some priority goal setting, share some of the goals that have been set, and also hear from you all about what you're thinking. Talk also about future ready teaching and learning and what that means to the district, what that means to you all, and also talk about ideas about approaches to school design. So the SBC meeting that you were just in was really kind of getting into a much more granular level of sort of the square footage and some of the MSBA requirements. This process is really much more high level, big picture visioning around your educational and architectural priorities. I'm getting a bit of feedback, and I'm hoping that people can just turn off their mics if it's possible, if you see that it's on. Okay, great. And then we're going to do some blue sky ideas brainstorming. We'll leave time at the end for Q&A. I've allotted 10 minutes, but I'm sure we can stay longer if we need to. And certainly we will be keeping track of people's questions and making all this information available in terms of the process that we've been going through. So just very briefly, we have spoken to the educational leadership team. We had a kickoff meeting with them, and yesterday we had another workshop with them to sort of talk about priorities. And we've also met with the faculty from Fox Hill and Pine Glen, had virtual meetings with them in which we've engaged them with conversations about their priorities. And we've been talking about educational priorities, their educational vision within each of the Fox Hill and Pine Glen, as well as within the district, and connecting those two ideas about design. This will all translate into how Donna and her team work with you all on looking at key spaces and adjacencies. And we started talking about that yesterday in the leadership meeting. The meetings that we did have with your teachers were virtual, which allowed, I think, more people to participate. And we make them highly interactive, and using this interactive feedback mechanism can really see what people are thinking and can share ideas. We're collecting all this information as a set of consolidated notes that so people can see in detail, sort of, and also an executive summary of all the priorities that are being established. And this is really about establishing a narrative that connects to, as part of this module, I'll go back here, there's an educational plan that the district will be writing that will connect to this feasibility study. And what the Mass School Building Authority, your funding partner, would like to see is that the narrative that you have really looks at what you do now, what you feel like you do really well, what you'd like to be doing in the future that you can't do now, or that you feel like your buildings maybe are holding you back from, and how you envision your designing your buildings to be able to support your goals and to optimize the use of space. And we certainly want to build upon and have been building upon your district agenda and programming. Now, the focus of this feasibility study, as I said, it's a very high level, big picture. We're looking at a number of different options, and the priorities that we're articulating in this visioning process with all these different stakeholder groups are going to serve as the lenses through which we look at what is your best option, what's going to give you the best solution. What the MSBA has approved is a study of a Fox Hill Elementary School for 325 students, or a combined consolidated Fox Hill Elementary and Pine Glen Elementary for 640 students. And within that conversation, there will be, the design team will be looking at a building renovation of either school, renovation addition, and new construction. And again, the priorities that we've been sort of identifying really connect to all of these different scenarios and will help us to create a matrix that will allow us to weigh out different options. So much of this work has been talking about educational, architectural, and community priorities, and I'm going to be polling people in this group soon about what your educational, architectural, and community priorities are. But I did want to say that for those people that may not be familiar with the MSBA process, that when we think about a renovated school going through this process, you can really assume that it will be a substantial renovation, and that any school that we design, there's some pretty low-hanging fruit, things that we know we are going to address. So, and many people who live and work or have families whose children go to schools that are older, have some pretty basic things that they would like to see in a school. But any renovated or new school is going to be fully ADA compliant, handicapped accessible. We'll definitely be thinking about safety and security features, both passive and active. We'll be thinking about heating and cooling. We look at schools as community centers that are used throughout the year. And so we have to allow for that. There will be new technology, a robust technology infrastructure, modular furniture that come along with this. And all classrooms will be well-sized and have natural light. And we tend to design schools now with larger classrooms because they tend to have multiple things going on in them at this point, and oftentimes multiple adults working with students on a variety of activities. Other things that any renovated or new school will have is connections to the indoors and the outdoors. We have seen through the pandemic how important that is. We'll be taking an approach to special education and differentiated delivery, which is called push-in, which means that although you might have some substantially separate programs that would have their own sort of area within the school, all other delivery of special education services needs to happen in close proximity or within general ed classrooms. So one of the things we talk about is breakout rooms that are immediately adjacent to or connected to classrooms, and areas in the classroom where that kind of small group and more targeted work can happen. We'll be thinking about safe drop-off and pickup and traffic as part of this study. Sustainable building features, we'll be looking at LEED certification or mass chips. And we'll be looking at having a number of distributed bathrooms, and some of them will be gender neutral. So those are just some of the big picture things that we know that any new or renovated school will have. So this is really an opportunity to be aspirational in your thinking. And at the same time, we know we don't want to be trendy. We want to listen carefully to what you do and what you need, and think carefully about what is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck within this building and provide a school that will last for decades to come. So part of this process is kind of sharing ideas and showing examples of schools that have been designed and built within the last 5 years. But it's really about what resonates with you, and what you think will work best for you. We're trying to push people thinking forward about what's possible, but also just listening to then assess what the best solution for you is going to be. Other overarching themes when we design schools these days, we can use every square inch of the building because it's all wired, and kids have multiple devices, and will continue to have multiple devices, some of which we don't even know about yet. So we can think about flexible and multi-use spaces within the building. Learning doesn't just have to happen within the classroom. Particularly in new school buildings, we're looking at minimizing the amount of hallway and also making that hallway more flexible and usable, sort of maybe expanding it to create some extended learning areas. We want to build synergy and connectivity between classrooms, breakout rooms, gathering spaces, small group rooms. And we want to define learning clusters and communities, particularly when we look at combining the option of combining two schools. We know that a huge concern is that kind of intimacy, and for elementary school age children to feel connected, to feel a strong sense of ownership, like they're part of a small learning community. And we can definitely do things with the design of a building and the organization of adults and children within that building to make that happen. The classroom is still every bit as important as it always has been. We need them to be really flexible. We'll talk about what that looks like. Many schools are thinking about hands-on learning and making sure that their classrooms and other spaces can support project-based and hands-on learning, and also support community use, safe access. So we're oftentimes looking at an entry, maybe even a separate entry for the community after hours, and parts of the school that can be completely blocked off from the rest of the school, and really fostering that community connectivity, seeing schools as hubs of community. So with that, I'm going to ask people to go to mentimeter.com. You're going to go to www.menti.com. You can either open up another browser on your laptop or on your smartphone. You can use the QR code or go to menti.com. It'll ask you to punch in a number code, the number that you see right here. Any of the slides that I'm going to show you that are interactive are going to have this code at the top. So if you, for some reason, get booted off, you'll be able to get back on. When you get there, if you could just hit the thumbs up that you see, we can see in the lower corner, we've got 9 people that are connected, 10. So this allows us to, know that you're able to access this interactive platform. Another thing I'll say about it is it's completely anonymous, but we are going to be able to see visually what you are thinking. Something that is a little bit strange about this is we're kind of doing a workshop where we're collecting a lot of information, but we're not going to really hear your voices at this time. However, we definitely want to hear your comments and towards the end and questions. But this will allow us to collect your thoughts in your words, and we're going to be then taking all that information, looking at all the themes that come up, and making sure we include all the voices that are in the mix. So I'm gonna move on here again. If you are not on there for any reason, you should be able to see at the top of every interactive slide the code and the URL for getting there. So I'm going to ask you in just a moment on the next slide what your educational priorities are. But I did want to just briefly show you some of the themes that have been coming up. So as I said, we've done workshops with your leadership group. with Fox Hill faculty, Pine Glen faculty. And all the things in red are the things that are common themes that have come up around collaborative and flexible learning, what we call student-centered learning. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a while, about being inclusive, differentiating instruction to meet kids where they're at, supporting small group learning, supporting community connections and partnerships, connecting to the outdoors, and again, supporting small group work. So with that, I'm going to ask you to share what your top educational priorities are for the Fox Hill and Pine Glen elementary schools. And the next slide is gonna be architectural priorities. So while you can certainly talk about space here, there's gonna be another opportunity to do that. So this is really about what are the educational programs that are most important to you, or that you think are most important to the district or these schools, or the educational approaches that you want to make sure that any renovated or new building is going to take into account and support. And what I'm going to do as things come in is I'll just talk about some of the themes coming up. I may not get to every single one, but rest assured that when we consolidate the notes, we'll make sure that everything is included. And you should be able to submit multiple times here, just so you know. So again, small group learning. And small group learning is really about, it could be sort of a small group that's working on a project. It could be a small group that's working with a paraprofessional. And so that could happen in the context of a classroom or in maybe a breakout room nearby. I see SEL, which means social emotional learning. So supporting kids to develop socially, emotionally, and certainly the school building has a lot that it can do to help facilitate that. STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and that's an integrated approach to learning about science, technology, and engineering concepts, but using art and humanities and numeracy to kind of do integrated and very engaging, oftentimes very authentic kind of project work. So close collaboration opportunities for teachers and students, flexible learning spaces, a real community feel, small community feel. And we think about sort of how do we create a whole school community connection and how do we create smaller orbits within the school where students can feel connected to an even smaller community. Literacy and excellence, reading, writing, math, and science. We know that mastery of core academics is really sort of the framework for all of this, is what we're kind of moving towards. Maintaining 2 school communities on 2 different properties that prioritize the needs and integrity of all students in both distinct neighborhoods. And we know that's a big part of the discussion is, and that people like their neighborhood schools. And this is a difficult conversation when you have one school that's been approved and the district is sort of weighing out sort of the pros and cons of all of this. Maintaining smaller classroom sizes, not small group learning separate from a classroom, okay? Maintaining accessible nature walks and small community. The need to be small class sizes, and that's a theme that has come up a lot. We know that's very special and to, and important to the district and the community. Needs to be an environment to support our teachers' needs while taking into consideration the ever-changing student needs, and needs to be able to accommodate the ever-changing technologies and growth. Also feeling safe, building in safety measures, maintaining 2 schools on 2 separate properties again. Okay, great. I'm gonna change this slide in about 15 seconds. So if you have something you want to submit, a facility that best meets the needs of the students in the town, safe community use and access, addressing special ed needs early in students' education, and keeping classrooms small, 2 separate schools. Smaller classrooms, flexible learning while maintaining 2 separate schools on separate grounds. All right. Okay, so I'm going to flip over to the next, which is looking at the architectural priorities that have been established. Safety and welcome right up at the top, and those 2 are connected. We want to make sure that the school is really controlling access, and gatekeeping also feels welcoming and warm. Certainly an innovative design that's inspirational, that kids and teachers and families and the community can feel proud of and excited about. Being inclusive and welcoming, being environmentally sustainable, incorporating outdoor learning spaces, counseling suite, good storage and acoustics, thermal comfort, adequate bathrooms, good natural light, sustainability, outdoor learning and play, the idea of a healthy building in terms of ventilation and HVAC systems and materials, safe drop-off and pickup, and teacher workspaces and support. So those are some of the themes that have come up. I'm going to ask you now to share your top architectural priorities for a renovated or new Fox Hill and Pine Glen Elementary School. And natural light, we know, is a huge consideration. There's lots of studies that show the positive effect that natural light has on student attention and performance and overall health for teachers and students. And we need to be able to control light, connections to the outdoors, avoiding a bottleneck in entry and exit. There's already a lot of backup at Fox Hill. We've heard that feedback. Having a safe and welcoming entry, safety, given the world we live in now. Yes, and those safety measures are both passive and active. We'll talk a little bit more about them when we get to ideas about design. Air quality, ensuring that the school will not be will outgrow it immediately, so adequate size, an outside exit in each classroom as much as possible, maintaining 2 separate schools where they currently exist, small neighborhood schools as a top priority, creating the small community feel, outdoor access. Shared facilities that can benefit the entire community throughout the year, auditorium, gyms, fields, etc. And we definitely think about making those big ticket items accessible in safe ways. Open and natural light spaces, good flow between spaces, while still having separation and independence. Technology, infrastructure, okay, wall modularity to manage space and improve infrastructure easily. We know that technology is going to continue to evolve. We're going to need to support that. Traffic flow and safety within your neighborhoods, gymnasium space that will support the school and community needs, a slanted roof. Multi-level schools lose the small school community feel that foster the social and emotional health of our kids. Don't like to bring this up, but safety measure to secure classrooms if there is a safety issue. We always have to think about lockdown situations and how the school functions within that scenario. Safety and ability for teachers to protect our kids, and room size sustainable to have individual attention on students. Garage doors. Enough classrooms for growth of enrollment, a combined school to take advantage of economies of scale and get the most classrooms using state funds. Okay, we'll leave this slide on for another 10 seconds in case anyone wants to hit the button. Okay, so the last category in this particular section is around your community priorities, and obviously many of these things overlap. So again, some of the themes that have come up: community use and access, safe community use and access, the use of outdoor spaces, including athletic fields, display and exhibition within schools, celebrating student work, the long-term viability of any new or renovated building, making sure that there are community gathering spaces, that the schools are inclusive and accessible, that there's space for community partners, and a clear benefit for the community, maintenance of small class sizes. All right, so I'm going to open up here for you all to share your community priorities. Okay, better traffic flow, small community feel, neighborhood school, and maintaining small class sizes. A small community feel should not be exchanged for federal dollars. Shared community resources like fields, gyms, and performing arts center. Improvement of traffic flow again, neighborhood schools again. Traffic for combined school on-site will overwhelm neighborhood streets. And we definitely heard that concern voiced. Yes to the combined list shared on the previous slide. Combine the schools and open up the current Pine Glen for pre-K use at the very least. Okay, updated playgrounds. How do you plan to reduce traffic flow? Resources for the community for after-school hours. Traffic increase will also be dangerous for kids walking to and from school. The larger schools should be on main roads, and the Fox Hill site is not the place for a large school. There's an environmental impact of cars idling if enrollment increases. Providing for outdoor dining. Again, small neighborhood schools, best education spaces possible. More crosswalks and raised tables would be required instead of shaved down speed bumps. All right, and shaded areas, state-of-the-art playground, outdoor Wi-Fi and classroom. Less traffic on side streets, 2 separate schools. Fox Hill is not made for a super school. Small classrooms, keep the community neighborhood schools. Splash pad. Outdoor classroom learning space again. Welcoming to the community, but with boundaries. Yeah, and whenever we do, we definitely are very thoughtful about how community access happens in safe ways and how whole portions of the school can be blocked off. Again, an outdoor dining space. Okay, I'm going to leave this on for another 10-15 seconds if people want to have any last input here. Okay, the next section that I wanted to share with you is around discussions we've been having around future ready learning goals. And I will say here that I know we have community members, and for people that are non-educators, I'm going to try and keep this as jargon-free as possible. But just know that, you know, the teachers at both schools have sort of weighed in, and the leadership around the things that are really top of mind for them. About what they know a building needs to support. And these are things that are very connected to what schools around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and throughout the country are thinking about. And certainly when we design a school, and particularly a new school or renovated school, we want to make sure that it's not going to be obsolete and that it's going to be able to adapt to evolution of technology and teaching methodology. So just real briefly, the 6 R's, or what people know as the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, are about that mastery of core academics. And they're right up at the top here because we know that's what our schools are charged with. Something that a lot of educators are thinking about, and it's actually baked into Next Gen MCAS and Next Gen Science standards, are what we call the 5 C's, which are kind of more higher order thinking skills that are about helping students develop confidence to be more independent learners and to be lifelong learners. So that includes being good critical thinkers, communicators, collaborators, feeling confident creatively, and also feeling, you know, understanding what it means to be a citizen within the school community and within the larger community. So these are things that imply that that students should be taking some of the content that they're learning and applying it in ways that are kind of more authentic and problem and project-based. So there's a big interest in schools in project-based learning, and certainly that's nothing new. And it's definitely something we do a lot of in elementary schools. But we want to make sure to create schools that can support that. And part of that is the STEM and STEAM, science, technology, engineering, math, and then the A adds the art, which is really art and humanities, an integrated approach. And many elementary and certainly middle and high schools have STEAM or STEM labs where kids can do lots of great project-based and hands-on projects. Other things that we're thinking about, as we've talked about, is differentiated learning. We connect that to the idea of what we call universal design for learning, meeting kids where they're at, tailoring delivery whenever possible to their learning needs and styles. And then a big one is social emotional learning and working with students on developing a sense of themselves as part of a community, learning about relationship and communication skills. So these are, and technology is, we're just assuming it's going to be where you need it when you need it. So this all connects to, we're talking about elementary school kids, but this all connects to sort of the longer vision of what do you want a graduate from, you know, BPS schools to look like. And that really connects to, you know, the skills that are going to help students be successful either in the world of work and in the world of post-secondary study. And these are all those 5 C's are really what those skills, you know, we keep coming back to those skills, as well as adaptability and leadership. So so many schools are thinking about these. Again, the mastery of core academics is the umbrella or the foundation for all of this. But when we talk to your leadership within BPS, we ask them what was most important to them. And I'm going to go through these very quickly. I've got 14 different things. I'm going to, again, try not to use a lot of jargon. But after the first 7, I'm going to stop and ask you, you know, what do you think about these? Are these important to you? What would you like them to look like in any elementary school program within Burlington Public Schools? And how would you like them, you know, to maybe be further developed? So I'm going to do that for each set of 7. Then I'm going to ask you which of them are most important to you. And then I'm going to ask you what we're missing, because I know we're missing a lot. So, and I'm showing these to you in order of how they were prioritized by your district leadership. So right up at the top is that social emotional learning piece. And it has a lot to do with helping students to develop social awareness, to make responsible decisions, to develop their relationship skills. This has to do with mental health and mindfulness, and also students developing the confidence, you know, to succeed and thrive in school. PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, came number 2, and that is around differentiating instruction. So one thing that's really different about how schools operate these days is that there may be traditional delivery going on in a classroom with the teacher up in the front, and but there's also a lot of other small group things that are going on, more kind of self-paced learning, and there's also teacher aides and paraprofessionals that are working with smaller groups or individual students. So we see co-teaching, and again, that connects to that idea of what we call push-in delivery. And so that came up as very high on the list for your leadership. A lot of these things are connected. The next one is called student-centered learning, which is, again, about helping students to become more proactive learners and to develop a sense of agency and empowerment as learners. That means helping them to develop confidence in their communication, their organizational skills, their problem-solving skills. Real-world connections. Being able to connect what happens in school to the world outside of school. And this is very motivating for kids of all ages. So this connects to the idea also of parental involvement, adult world connections, field studies for students, and the idea of school itself as a community hub and resource. Cultural proficiency, which connects to the idea of what we call culturally responsive teaching, and being able to understand oneself, understand concepts of diversity and equity and inclusion, and multicultural perspectives. English language learning. And we know that's increasingly important to the district, helping students who are English language learners to move into, develop their academic skills in grade level content areas by understanding, reading, listening, and speaking English. STEM and STEAM, which I've mentioned before as kind of like an interdisciplinary approach to hands-on learning. And there's lots of great curriculum around this that many elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools have. So that was the first group of them. You don't see them here on your, wait a minute, let's see. Whoops, there should be a list here. Is there a list that appears on your, I think this is asking you to look at the things that are on the list. You should see it in your interactive dialogue box, and to talk about the things that are most important to you. And you can also say how you would like to see them further developed within BPS elementary schools, and especially as we think about a newer school building. Thanks for letting us know that you see the list, Steve. So STEM and social emotional learning. Social emotional learning that fosters inclusion of neurodiversity. So again, looking at students' learning needs as connected, and their learning style as connected to delivery. That student-centered learning, social emotional learning again. More playing and problem solving in outdoor or technology-free spaces. Okay. Cultural proficiency, STEM and STEAM, 3, 4, 5, empowering students with confidence and resources. I would like the flexible classroom space to encourage student-centered learning. All of these, we want adaptable, empathic, STEM, STEAM, compatible, and capable and self-aware kids. All right. An active learning space. And I will say that when we think about classrooms, generally the Mass School Building Authority template is a very thoughtful template of spaces, and classrooms in elementary schools range between 850 and 950 square feet, which are bigger than we used to design classrooms. And that's because we see multiple things going on within a classroom, and we need to be able to support that. And we often look at classrooms as kind of maker spaces themselves, with modular flexible furniture, good storage. Every MSBA classroom in an elementary school will have 2 sinks in it. Okay, STEM learning choices and maker spaces. I'm going to leave this on again for another 10 seconds before we move on. ELL, real world connections, interaction with each other. All right, all of these. Yeah, and we know they're all important. We're just trying to sort of gauge what's top of mind for folks. So I'm going to go to the next set of 7. So academic growth mindset is something that a lot of schools are talking about. It really is about the value of effort over innate intelligence, and encouraging students to be risk takers, even if they're not going to be good at something when they first start it. So, you know, just because I'm not good at art or math or sports, if we want to communicate to them that if they work hard and persevere through setbacks, that they're going to improve. And that's how we all learn. So academic growth mindset, universal design for learning, which connects to that idea of differentiated delivery. So it means that we want to vary delivery methods and have multiple means of representing content and information, and giving students the opportunity to express what they know and engage with that information. And some of it should be active and expressive. And so, you know, we want a whole range of delivery methods. The 5 C's, which we had mentioned before, came up on the list of priorities for the district. And those, again, are those higher order thinking skills. And these are these are not fringe at all. As I said, they're baked into MCAS and Next Gen Science standards, which are sort of really expecting that students in standardized exams are going to be able to do some of that critical thinking and be able to extrapolate and synthesize information. So there, again, there's a lot of emphasis on helping kids to practice those skills. Health and wellness, which is really can connect to the idea of movement and access to outdoor play and fitness. It can connect to mental health as well, physical education, mindfulness, and mastery of core academics, which we know, again, is really important. And we can see that in basic literacy, for instance, there's an increased emphasis on reading content-rich nonfiction and being able to help students learn how to cite evidence from text, and also in mathematics to learn sort of mathematical concepts that they can apply to problem solving. Hands-on and project-based learning. And this is nothing new. We've been doing project-based learning for a long time, but there is increased emphasis on this because this is how we help students practice the 5 C's. And it does imply that in addition to things like summative assessments or exams, we're doing performance assessment, kids doing things like exhibitions or student-led conferences, or creating products that they display. And it also connects to the idea of that authentic context for the problems that students are grappling with. So I'm going to ask you for these, which of the ones are most important to you and that you'd like to see further developed within BPS elementary schools? Okay, so a couple of growth mindsets with a focus on perseverance as a priority, hands-on and project-based learning. And those, by the way, are very connected because it's through doing projects that kids learn some of that perseverance. Mastery of core academics, a few times here, health and wellness, hands and minds on learning. All of them, if I had to order them, and I'm going to ask you to order them in the next slide. All of them are important. Mastery probably first, health and wellness. Tie the mastery of core academics to the real world so students understand why they need to learn math and science. Yeah, and that's a huge emphasis really in our programming these days, which is why that problem-based learning and the 5 C's have become so central to conversations that schools are having. Critical thinking and problem solving, more mastery, and problem solving, how to learn. Explicit and science-based reading instruction. Okay, I'll stay on here for about 10 more seconds. Okay, more mastery with health and wellness, but hands-on is critical. Okay. Now I've listed the focus areas that I just went through. And if you could help us understand, again, we know they're all important, but just to get sort of a top of mind, what do you see as most important for BPS schools, elementary schools? And you can order all of them in priority, or you can give us your top 5. And we're going to see a graph, as you can see, kind of emerging here. So I'm not sure what our base number is at, how many people are voting, but I'm going to leave it up for a while longer. I can see, we can see mastery of core academics right up at there at the top, with the great interest also in hands-on project-based learning, SEL, real-world connections, STEM and STEAM. So I'm going to leave this up for another 30 seconds or so if you're still prioritizing. And if you've already submitted, I'll tell you that the next slide, I'm going to be asking you what's missing from this list. What's important to you that that hasn't been included so far in the discussion? And I'm sure, you know, there are going to be things that we haven't mentioned yet. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So what other programs, focus areas, priorities, or language is missing from the previous list that you would like to make sure we are taking into account? Yep, so where does mental health support fall? Which I would, you know, I would say is a big part of the social emotion, SEL, social emotional learning, but some specific kind of thinking about that in terms of guidance suite and access to services is part of that conversation. Reading programs that address individual student needs and styles, learning styles, recess, quality teaching staff, attracting and maintaining, physical space, movement, activity, mental health support, more focus on play, especially at the younger grades, tutoring, healthy lunch options. Having a movement space, and we're often thinking about indoor areas for movement, as well as outdoor, age-appropriate kind of context for play, self-directed curiosity, vegetarian entrees as connected to healthy lunch options. Music, and activity-based learning, effective and flexible special education programming. I'm going to leave this up for another 15 seconds or so. Cultural inclusiveness, school-based reading clinics for children with special ed needs. Responsible computer use. Okay. So the last part here of this interactive presentation is going to be focusing on things we think about when we design schools. And we're calling them design patterns. We've been working with each of your stakeholder groups to try and identify what are the things that stand out to them when they think about their needs within a new building. We introduced 34 of these design patterns to try and, again, see what resonated. People had the opportunity to vote on the ones that they liked the most and give them thumbs up. You're going to have the opportunity to do that in just a moment. And from that, we identified a set of the top 24 design patterns. And But I will say that in each of the Fox Hill and Pine Glen workshops, we first isolated sort of the top 15 of these 34 design patterns for each school. And in this slide, you can see that out of the top 15 of 34 design patterns that were identified by each school, 11 of them are shared by both schools. So that's a lot of alignment. That's a lot of agreement about the things that are most important as they think about teaching and learning environments. And then there were some additional design patterns that Fox Hill and Pine Glen each respectively identified. So we're going to share each of these with you now. And then a few others that just didn't appear on this list yet, but that we want to just share with you and get your feedback on. So you'll be able to rate every slide. And I'm going to spend just about 30 seconds on each slide. So, but the more feedback we get, the better. If you love this design pattern for a Fox Hill or Pine Glen or combined school, put a heart. If you think it's a great idea, you can put a thumbs up. If you don't really like it at all, you can put a thumbs down. And if you need to find out more information about it to really give us feedback, you can put a question mark. And this is just to sort of get the pulse. Now, I'm going to do these in a few different sets. I'm gonna show you the top shared design patterns, the first 11, and then I'm going to stop and have you rate them against each other. So you're going to be able to vote on them individually, but then rate them against each other. Then I'm going to show you the other ones identified respectively by Fox Hill and Pine Glen and have you rate those as well. So here are the first 11, and I'm showing you them in order of how they were prioritized by the teaching groups. So the first one is, not surprisingly, flexible classrooms and spaces. So when we look at what is in a flexible classroom, well, I mentioned that every classroom now has 2 sinks in it because we think about doing project-based learning. We tend not to put carpets because we don't want them to get messy if we're doing project-based learning. We want good natural light, but we also want to have blinds to control that light. We want good storage, some of it lockable storage. This classroom has a little nook in it where 1 or 2 kids can sit and read or decompress if they need to. We've got modular flexible furniture here that can be arranged for individual work or in small group work. And it's easy to rearrange. We've got ergonomic furniture that allows kids to fidget. We know that helps them concentrate. And we've got good technology that is robust, and students can use technology when needed. Security and welcome was next on the list. Again, not surprisingly. We've got an entry vestibule here. That's a gatekeeping mechanism where after school has been opened, the doors get locked. People need to get buzzed in. In this example here, you can see there's actually like a bank teller window that if your student forgets their lunch, you don't even have to go into the school to drop it off. And then many schools, after the doors are locked, you actually have to walk through the administrative suite to get into the school. So that gatekeeping mechanism is very important. Of course, security cameras, lockdown scenarios and planning, and the abilities to close off whole portions of the school in a lockdown situation, good line of sight, and the ability to really be able to easily monitor who's in the building. So these are all things that are part of the security piece. And then welcome, we also wanted to feel welcoming and warm and safe. That's part of feeling warm, is that feeling of safety. So perhaps warm wood tones, as you can see here, places to sit if parents are waiting to talk to administrators, and work on the walls, or a flat screen monitor that has pictures of great things going on. Good storage and cubbies, that always comes up really high. Storage for students, as well as storage for teachers and within the classroom. So you can see we've got lockers here or cubbies. Whether those cubbies are in a hallway or maybe in an antechamber to a classroom might depend on the age of students. Here inside the classroom, you can see that there's these movable whiteboard walls. You've got lots of deep storage behind it, so you can make it disappear or access it easily. So we want to be, thinking about good storage within classrooms, and some of it lockable storage. breakout and pullover spaces. These are examples of these small group rooms that oftentimes we're putting in schools where they might be connected immediately adjacent to classroom or shared by two classrooms or accessible from the hallway. We oftentimes put in some good visibility in there for informal monitoring, but again, there's always blinds if you need privacy. This is where you might do small group project work, where you might do testing, where you might do tutoring, and where you might sort of extend learning if kids are doing independent project work. So they add a lot of flexibility to sort of the palette of spaces that teachers and students have access to. Professional work areas, we're definitely thinking about providing areas where teachers can meet and collaborate, where they can have lunch, where they can work independently, where they can lock their stuff. And part of the reason for that is we want to increase how classrooms are being used. So if a teacher has a planning period, their classroom doesn't need to sit empty. It can be used by another teacher, and that increases sort of the use of the effectiveness of the school and how many classrooms you have. Welcoming arrival and safe drop off and pickup. I should say, with all of these things, don't get caught up in, well, I don't like necessarily this particular aesthetic. It's all about the idea of these design patterns. So what do we mean by welcoming arrival? Well, you should be able to see where you enter the school. There should be a place to get out of rain or snow if you're waiting to enter the school. It's nice to have places to sit outside for kids to gather if they're waiting to be picked up, or for parents if they're dropping off their kids, but they're with their toddlers, they can talk to other parents. And there should be good lines of sight, nothing blocking visibility to that main point of entry. And it's connected to safe drop off and pickup, traffic patterns, and separating bus access, pedestrian, cars, bikes, walkability. Cafeterias and multi-purpose rooms. These are often sort of the hubs of the school, and we see cafeterias as being used throughout the day. And there's definitely been a lot of discussion about wanting to promote performance or have venues for performance, student performance. Here's some examples where you can see that you have a professional stage with lighting and sound. We control for acoustics. These are highly flexible multi-purpose spaces that can be used for large school gatherings and by the community. Many communities use them as revenue generating sources as well, because they're large spaces that can be rented out. And again, they will be blocked off from other areas of the school as part of the community core. Collaborative environments. Here is a media center library, in which students can do collaborative work. It's also a place where teachers would do professional development, for instance. But we're also thinking about those between spaces where you might have furniture that sort of facilitates kids just getting up and going with their teacher to another environment where they might be read a story, where they might be doing an activity, where small group work might be happening, to really sort of maximize the use of those between spaces so that they just don't go as unused square footage. Library Learning Commons is oftentimes the hub of the school. It's where we see now it's a collaborative environment. It's still, we're going to access books and technology. It's oftentimes where technology classes take place. And it's oftentimes where, if you have a STEM or STEAM lab, it might be connected to that, largely because the librarian could be the person running that STEM or STEAM lab, potentially, but also because there's a good, kind of cross-pollination that goes on. And there should be spaces for quiet reading and study. Wayfinding and streetscapes, the idea here is that you're not just walking down an institutional hallway lined with lockers where everything looks the same, but we can use color, we can use graphics, we can use floor patterning and tiles, we can use art and display, super graphics, to create environments where it's easy to find your way through the school. This is definitely connected to universal design and accessibility. So people of differing abilities can easily access and walk through a school, but it's also about creating an excitement about learning and putting some things on display where there are interesting things happening, or having areas along the way where you can stop and where you have a sense of identity and belonging. Engaged outdoor play definitely needs to be age appropriate. Some of it's going to be formal, some of it's going to be informal, some of it's going to be on playing fields. We know that it also needs to be accessible to the community after hours. And we know that younger kids have very different needs than older elementary school students. So that's the first 11 of the design patterns, and these again were the ones that were prioritized by Fox Hill and Pine Glen teachers and agreed upon as in their top, priority list. So we just like to get a sense of from you, out of what you just saw, what's most exciting as you think about a renovated or new building. And then again, that's not to say that all of these aren't important, and all of them are things we're certainly going to be thinking about. So looking like flexible classrooms and spaces is trending up at the top, as are engaged outdoor play, library learning commons, security and welcome. As you can see, there's overlap between a lot of these patterns as well, but it really is about helping the design team to work with stakeholders to identify kind of a common language about how you want to describe what it is that you want from your building. Okay, last time we had 16. I'll leave this up for another 15 seconds or so, just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to submit. All right. So now I have 8 more design patterns I'm going to share with you. 4 of them showed up in Fox Hill's top 15. 4 of them showed up in Pine Glen's top 15. So this one is kind of a given in terms of an approach to push in special education, in which we're going to make sure that unless you have separate programs like your lab program, that special education classrooms, small group rooms, and those breakout rooms where pullover and a differentiated instruction can happen are in close proximity to general ed classrooms. And these are not round rooms. This is a neighborhood. We call this a bubble diagram just to indicate spaces and adjacencies, but you can see this is a collection of classrooms. It could be a grade level cluster, and that special education and opportunities for differentiated instruction are fully integrated within that. Flexible furniture, this is also something that we know we're going to be thinking about. The furniture may not look like this, but just the idea that it's not one size fits all. We want to be thinking about flexible modular furniture within the classroom and within other parts of the school things like these wobble chairs, we know, help kids to focus and are loved by children and adults as well. But, you know, scoping out the appropriate furniture to meet your needs is going to be, you know, an important part of this process later on as the building goes through design. Classroom neighborhoods. So the idea of classroom neighborhoods, this is the Zervis School in Newton, and this plan you can see, which is what you see in the photo as well, is a collection of classrooms that instead of just having an empty hallway, it's more of a cul-de-sac off of a hallway in which this becomes a small learning community that includes 4 classrooms. It includes a small group room and a pull-out space, as well as what would otherwise be just a hallway is now a project-based, a flexible and project-based learning area with storage, with just simple furniture. And what's nice about this is that, you know, you can use every square inch of this. Teachers have options for, you know, large group, small group, whole group kind of activities. And there's also quite a bit in this scenario, quite a bit of transparency. There are blinds here that come down in the case of a lockdown. There are areas in the classroom with floor patterns that show kids where to go in case of a lockdown. But this particular school elected to have quite a lot of sort of visible connectivity with each other within this small learning community. Outdoor connections and learning, we already saw outdoor play. Here, you know, thinking about things like outdoor classrooms at the Bancroft Elementary School. Here you can see this is a wired outdoor classroom. So it's got Wi-Fi. It's covered from the elements, but it's open air. We can also think about, you know, connecting kids to sort of natural play spaces and just really fully maximizing the use of the site that you're on. And then additional Pine Glen design patterns. The heart of the school, the idea here is that there's a kind of a there, that there's a place where a whole school community is built. It could be the library, media center, it could be the cafeteria, where you might have flexible furniture, and just a pleasant environment for having large events where you're bringing the whole school together. And it also is kind of like, it's nice to have this heart of the school kind of centrally located because it's where you build whole school community. There might be smaller hearts around the school where you would have smaller gathering areas, but this is sort of thinking about, you know, the kind of the town square of the school. Extended learning spaces. So these are some examples of how being creative about, now we want most of our square footage to be in classrooms, but square footage in hallways, which you need for circulation anyway, just goes unused except for in between classes. And so to think about how to maximize the use of some of those spaces to create an area like this that you see in the Herd Wyman Elementary, where you have an area right it's visually screened, but it's open and it's connected to a number of classrooms nearby. And this is where small group work can happen, pullover work, tutoring. Here at Cabot Elementary, you can see that that learning space is outside of the guidance suite right here. And at the Ivan Smith Elementary, the hallway is wider, and these are some learning spaces that are really fully maximizing that square footage and for extending learning from the classrooms. Now, the classrooms themselves, we want to think about classroom zones to be able to organize, to have, you know, you got your rug area, maybe you've got your messy area, certainly in a kindergarten classroom, but oftentimes we're thinking about upper grade levels as well as being organized in these ways. So you've got multiple venues and areas where different things can be happening. And that's why the flexible furniture is so important, because you need then to kind of reconfigure the furniture quickly for more traditional or whole group activities. And enrichment spaces. This is part of the MSBA template. We know, you know, you'll have your music, you'll have your art. I think in a case of a combined Pine Glen and Fox Hill, you would have one of each of these, art, music, and we want to create them as centrally located, make sure that they're easy to get to. Oftentimes we want to kind of celebrate some of the stuff that's going on because it's pretty interesting in there. We know we need to make sure that music is acoustically separate. But again, thinking about fully integrating enrichment spaces into the core of the school. And so this is the list of the 8 that I just shared. I'm going to ask you to rate these, and then I just have one more collection. Okay, so outdoor connections and learning along with enrichment spaces up at the top, heart of school, push in special education. All right, I'll leave this on for another 10 seconds or so. And then the last 6 here that I'm going to share very quickly so we can get to Q&A is safe community access, which just illustrates here that we've got a community core that can be blocked off, completely locked off from the academic area of a school, so that really becomes a community resource that can be used after hours and on weekends. And yeah, and we can decide what spaces are accessible to the community and which are not. Clusters of learning. Now, this is an illustration actually of the DeBerry Homer Elementary, which illustrates that in this case, there is a central core that can be blocked off from schools. Now, this is laid out in various clusters. We could think of this as a lower school and an upper school, but this actual school is 2 elementary schools that share common spaces. And this is one of the things that has been brought up as an option for the design of the Fox Hill and Pine Glen, that the 2 schools would remain separate with their own identities and names, and that they would share certain large key spaces. We know that this can be done very successfully from this project, and this is one illustration of how we cluster that learning. Sustainability, just gonna, we know that it's gonna be a key part of the conversation, making sure that any renovated or new building has sustainable elements, and we'll be talking to the community about the extent to which they would, like to go green. But we have some pretty high bars to reach anyway. And STEM and STEAM and maker spaces. So these are those spaces that facilitate that great STEM and STEAM programming. They're project labs where there's good storage, flexible furniture. Here we have a garage door that goes to an outdoor area, rack metal shelving around the perimeter, storing kits of stuff, electrical that comes from the ceiling, very dynamic spaces, but they don't need to have a lot of bells and whistles. And finally, branding and identity. If you don't like the aesthetics of this, don't worry. It's more about the idea of using color, pattern, texture, to create different zones within the school that have their own identity. So you might have an early childhood area that has its own color theme, materials theme, or, earlier elementary or the upper elementary. So we'll be thinking about, and that creates that, we talk a lot about that sense of small school scale, and this is a part of that conversation. Oh, and this is the last one, display and exhibition, 2D and 3D display venues throughout the school. Nice to have it when you first entered the school, especially to see all the great work that's being done. And it could include flat screen monitors. So I'm going to have you rank these, and then I'm going to stop sharing and open up for any Q&A. All right, so safe community access and STEM and STEAM up at the top. All right, and I do have one more slide, which is just to give you an opportunity to share your personal favorite design patterns out of the ones that we've just shared. You should see a list of all of them. And if you want to share your top 3 and 5, just to give you an opportunity to tell us what's top of mind for you, what you'd be most excited about seeing. And you should share these, submit them separately. This is going to come out as something called a word cloud. So we'll see the things that get bigger or the things that are more often repeated. And the way this works is if you see something that you want to play off of and make sure that it gets bigger, you can repeat it. Just be sure to use the same language. Okay, outdoor connections, taking center stage and safe community access. All right, I'm gonna leave this open for another 10 seconds and then I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. All right, so I know that was a lot of information. And I know we're up against 8:30, but if people would like to, if people have any comments or questions, we can certainly open up for that now.
Some of the models of the schools that were pictured, were there both large and small schools pictured?
Yep. Some of them were for 640 students, 645 actually.
Mhm.
Some of them are the Harold Wyman School in Woburn, your neighbor. 3 classrooms per grade, right? So theirs for 400 students, but your 3 classrooms per grade would be 325, keeping it at 18 students a class.
Big school.
The Harold Lyman, it's not, it's 71,000 square feet. So it's
The picture of it.
The
Small
picture.
footprint.
Yeah, it's a 3-story, yeah. We're finding more and more space is just a challenge on sites, especially if you're having to build on a site that currently has a school. Becomes more and more challenging, but yeah, we've got the 640, one of them, the floor plan that David mentioned, having the 2 schools side by side, they're both 3 classroom grade level schools, which would be similar to yours. They have 800 students and theirs 400 and 400. So again, you can see your class size policy of having those small kids really is impactful.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful that you guys can do that.
Quick question. I thought the school committee had voted no on the 2 schools merging into one. Can anybody speak to why we're revisiting that?
The first part of the meeting was the state only approved the project initially as a 3-school option. So even with the school committee vote, they said 3 elementary schools. That's all right. So they only approved initially a combined Pine Glen, Fox Hill. We petitioned them to consider the 4. It was only in moving towards the MSBA board had to approve both options. So even if the school committee has stated that we have a 4-school option, we are required, if we want the state money, and the state is a partner, we have to explore both a combined option and a 4-school option. So it's not just the school committee making this decision, it's the state also as a partner making this decision if we want state money.
And with traffic as it is now for Fox Hill residents, which is horrendous, I live on Fox Hill Road, you're now gonna double the student population if you explore the 2-school system in one.
So I think what we discussed earlier in the meeting is looking at traffic studies for a combined school and a 4-school option that's currently being done. So it might be that how traffic enters and exits the site may need to change. But we can't, I'm going to do a double negative. We can't not, we have to explore both options. So
That's a requirement of the state.
it's a requirement of the state. So we either step out of the state program
Right.
and don't get their money, and then we can do whatever we want. We would still need the support of great professionals because I'm not designing a building. But in order for us to have access to whatever state reimbursement, Donna has to design a combined school option and a 4-school option.
And we have to know it's not a double. It's not a double. It's a 40% student increase. It's not double.
You're talking about 325 students for Fox Hill and 640 for the new student.
Fox Hill has 450 today.
Right.
So it would be a 40% increase in students
Than what
for the
you currently
640. Than what we currently
today.
Yeah.
But you're acting like 40% is not that large. It's almost half. So that's
not.
still a lot
It's-
of traffic.
It's a bigger school, but it's not double the current.
All I'm saying is all of your points are very valid, but if we want to continue in the MSBA process, we have to look at both. So we're exploring both. If we want to step away from the MSBA process, then we don't have access to the state funding. So again, I appreciate everyone has a combined school or a non-combined school opinion. I think the time to share those opinions is certainly coming up, but the work that Donna has to do now in order for us to even potentially have the state support us is we need to look at both.
So if we look at both options, because we have to, will have the opportunity to choose, right?
Yes,
And we will have presentations on what the four-school option would look like and what the preschool option would look like.
yes.
And at what point in time do we and the community get to see that and make a choice? A final choice.
Again, as Steve,
This is not a school committee meeting. I just want to be a little clear there that we're no longer in a school building committee meeting, right?
I think
Yeah.
this is just,
Yeah.
this is
But
just
this is not
informational. No,
public anymore,
There's
right?
no forum.
Yeah.
so again, just informational. I think at some point, again, Donna, help me. I don't think Dawn Whittier's still here, but,
We're still here.
Community.
oh, you are.
Meeting.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't see you on the screen. Steve, could you help answer that question? Did you hear the question?
I did. I caught most of it. And if I don't respond to everything, please let me know. I'll try to address it a little bit better. But you're right, Eric. So part of the program is we need to go through that study. So we need to develop those options all in parallel, really to the same level of detail. So we're really kicking the tires on the enrollment options, the site options, configuration, classroom counts, adjacencies, single story, 2-story. This is the time to really literally throw everything on the table for the options, configurations, and all the inputs into the project on the table and see what sticks. And so I know there's a lot of concerns, traffic wise, there's concerns with wetlands. There's a lot of questions right now, and it's completely normal. And so the process is taking and hopefully combining and collecting all those questions and answering them slowly over time. And so I think the question included a comment about when we get to make that decision. So feasibility has 2 separate phases. We're in the preliminary design program now. And that is throw everything on the table against the wall and see what sticks and uncover every possible solution, and lift up and look under every possible rock for the challenges, but then what opportunities are there as well. At the end of PDP, we submit all those options. If there's clear options that just do not have any merit whatsoever, we have an option to petition to the MSBA in our PDP preliminary design program submittal to take a couple of those options off the table if that's the choice. After PDP, we go into what's called PSR, is the preferred schematic report, and that's the process of really drilling down to one singular option. So that's a little bit about the feasibility process, and I don't think the timeline was part of the presentation tonight, but.
No, so currently we're looking to submit the preliminary design program in June. And then submit the preferred schematic. We're waiting for MSBA to tell us what the actual date is, but sometime at the end of December.
So the fall would be.
The fall, right. So it would give people an opportunity before summer break to kind of say, okay, this is everything that's on the table. We will then work all summer. And then we'll be able to come back and have more meaningful conversations. Happy to do it over summer. We'll be there, but
If as a community, I understand this to still entertain state funding, we have to look at the 3 option, the 4 option. And if as a community school committee, we prefer this 4 option. Is that something that the state then pulls out?
no, as long as it's, here we go again with 325, right? So 325 students. Going back to, we'll inquire with them. Possible that we can, it sounds funny, like buy a couple of classrooms on our own type of thing. To add a few classrooms,
So that-
however many to.
It's still being entertained.
Yes, and 325. So, you guys are saying 3 or 4 school option, say it differently. MSBA is saying
Enrollment.
Fox Hill or Fox Hill and Pine Glen combined.
Okay.
And then 325 students for Fox Hill and 640 for combined Fox Hill Pine Glen, whatever that looks like, whether it's, a blended school, combined school, or 2 separate schools with shared core or whatever, but it would be those 2 schools combined.
And again, I do think the histories there are important because I think people are maybe trying to assign intent. When we first got into the state program, they only had one option, which was the 640 option. The town, the school committee petitioned MSBA for the 4-school option. That's why it's on the table. So it wasn't like we had a 4 option and we are now adding. The state said, oh, this is you're a 3 elementary school community.
Okay.
And we said, no, we'd like to have a 4-school option in the community. So they added that. We petitioned to add that option. That's why it's a choice.
Okay.
And we even have to look at choices that don't make any sense. So I think that's kind of be frustrating too, because Donnie, you also have to look at renovating the existing school.
That doesn't sound like such a bad idea right now. There's so much space in it.
It's gonna cost you,
A lot of money.
probably more, but
And
yeah.
then
And it's just no.
we have to look at the 3-school option, again, the 640 option on the Fox Hill site. We also have to look at the 640 school option on the Glen site. So again, the state really wants every single option to be explored. And then some will make financial sense and educational sense, others won't make financial sense. There's 1,000 different things going on. And if they,
Can I ask about the traffic analysis that was discussed earlier?
sure.
That was, I'm gonna presume, was that done when Memorial was built?
No, so, what I was referring to is the traffic analysis occurring, it's just for Fox Hill.
Okay.
And that was,
Well, the reason I asked is that Memorial's a fairly recent build. I'm curious why the traffic analysis was done when that school was built.
Yeah.
I was.
Can I ask a question?
What
Is
was the
there-
question? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Was that?
Sorry, my name's Helena Rain. I'm wondering if there is an option to, with considering state funding, to also throw in a Prop 2.5 override to gain additional tax dollars to maybe fund, to keep the schools separate and fully fund renovating 2 schools.
Yeah, it's always an option.
But that has nothing to do with that has nothing to do with the state. I think the state would estimate what what we would be eligible for, and that's never firmly sort of completed until much later on in the process. But let's say, again, just for conversation, they end up funding, say, 40% is reimbursable, but not all the spaces may be eligible for that 40%, so that they will go through and look at everything. So if we want a bigger gym or we want to add classrooms on our dime, for instance, they would only give us 40% for the classrooms that they approve. You would pay 100% of the other spaces if they even allow us to have them. So I'm saying that would be sort of the cost, and then the town would know what that total cost would be. Town meeting would need to approve that total cost, and then I'm assuming, Roger, you're the finance guy here, depending on whether it was how the town paid for it would determine whether there was an override needed or not needed or whatever.
Right, so currently my understanding is that Burlington is not at the limit of our taxing authority. We actually have quite a bit of headroom to tax more than we do. So it's unlikely that an actual override, 2.5 override would be necessary. However, everyone is very conscious about the tax rate and we don't want to spend money we don't have to. And because every $1 million, I don't know, it shouldn't make up numbers. Every $1 million we have to put on the bond schedule raises the taxes by a non-trivial amount.
Let me just throw something in because the whole tax, don't raise the taxes. I understand that. I've lived here a long time and have enjoyed low taxes. But this community has changed and it's a really nice, classy community. And to make a mistake by putting, for instance, in the Fox Hill neighborhood, a huge school way back in a beautiful neighborhood and make those 2 streets or even just one of them highways twice a day. It's just not something you do in a nice community. So,
But we're also landlocked where we're gonna put schools moving forward.
we've got the schools, we have Pine Glen, we can fix it, and we've got Fox Hill.
Well, and I think we have to consider too, those two roads are a major part of this. Also,
yeah.
Westwood and Fox Hill. But being a
They're already
resident
a
of one of
mess.
those side streets and a resident on that road for all 45 of my years. I can say the traffic pattern has already changed and will continue to on all of those side roads that have become cut throughs. So I definitely think there's a great number of people in the Fox Hill community that are concerned about that. I understand and respect there is a process here that has to happen. We have to look at the 3 option, the 4 option. I was asking about the Memorial traffic analysis because I see traffic challenges there myself when I try to go by as to how the entrance and exit of the school was designed. So what does the traffic analysis of the Fox Hill neighborhood look like? What are the potential recommendations coming out of it? How is it that we would get in and out of the property not on Fox Hill or Westwood? Those are, as we say, this is the time for these questions
And so,
and the information we need.
again, I think there's an educational programming part of this, because Donna has to learn about our program, because then the space needs to match our program. I think we also have to look at how the schools would fit on the property, given the wetlands and all that other stuff. But I do think at some point in the fall, we should have some community forums to allow people to come in when we can present different options, placements, traffic studies, and give voice to whomever. And honestly, the program is going to be high quality, whether it's 3 schools or 4 schools. So I don't even want to have that conversation, but I do think we have to also look beyond Fox Hill. So if the community has 3 relatively new schools and 3 schools that are past their life, I think if we're going to go to a 4-school option, we have to then talk about what's next for Pine Glen, because we can't wait another 15 years to do something there. And then this school is on track too. So we probably should have a community meeting. But Donna's role there would just be to present the expert sort of options. And then it would be the community to determine what it is they want. And then honestly, I can design an educational program in a treehouse. So we'll figure out what it is that you all want.
Well, that sounds good.
And then then the town has to figure out how to pay for it. So just to give you some idea, you guys are telling me about $1,000 a square foot roughly in today's world. So an 85,000 square foot elementary school, which is the 325, is about $85 million. The 150,000 is $150 million. So they're big ticket items. And so the 85, even if we go to a 4, we add another, if we go to 100,000 square feet with the additional classrooms, then that's about $100 million. But it's only the 85,000 square feet that would even be reimbursable. That would be reimbursable. So then,
Less than half.
or less than half of it. So, but only that part of it. I'm not sure I'm explaining that well, but that would be it. So it would just be also scale. So it might be a difference between, $25 million of state money versus, I don't know, 50 million of state money. But I'm saying, so, and that's what you all need to think about. So I know Donna can design it. I know Doran Whittier can project manage it. I know that the education will be high quality. You all just need to decide what you do, but I just don't want you to think just about Fox Hill, because then Pine Glen and the high school are also in need.
In need, absolutely. And I think neighborhood by neighborhood and within our communities, we have to consider all of that, because the Pine Glen community is as much a priority in how they would be impacted by this. I think what's coming out of this is there's definitely a need for a community forum. There's a need for transparency for these families and how we all are affected. Another perspective I want to think of, and I have to say that in all the presentations tonight, I'm quite impressed with the level of detail and consideration to the learning needs of our students in our community and everything. There were a great amount of detail in that, and I appreciate that. But being a parent that goes to Fox Hill every day with their child, I see the traffic patterns and whatnot, but also I see another consideration is that
the busing piece and the need of a special education population within Fox Hill and within Pine Glen. I, even as a CPAC member, I don't have a lot of information about what the programs are and whatnot, but I know there's a good deal of busing, and that doesn't just come from our community, our neighborhoods, that also comes from the lab collaborative, as I understand, in other communities. And I think it's just, you know, there's a lot of stakeholders here, and we want to take the perspective, have the transparency for everybody involved.
Did Helena have, your hand was raised, are you still there?
Yeah.
She already, oh, no, she raised her hand again.
Sorry, my bad. I'm just trying to take it down and I keep hitting. the button, so. But can I clarify one thing? Because it sounds, when I mentioned the Prop 2.5 override, that funding necessarily isn't the issue. Correct me if I'm wrong and I misheard this, but that we are under taxed, for lack of a better word. I know our tax rate is very low. I appreciate that, but that the money is available and we wouldn't necessarily have to raise taxes to fund two schools.
No. We don't have to raise taxes to fund two schools.
But we won't have to vote on a Prop 2.5 because we're below that threshold.
Right.
And town meeting also has to approve it. So you could go to them and say, we want to fund this ourselves. The town meeting could say, haha, no. And then you're back at square one.
Well, I think in turn, a little bit to Eric's confidence in things. I think if we put forward a good case, town meeting will approve it. But it really is important to come up with a really good case and a program that is not over the top in terms of size, and that we can demonstrate will not impact all of the constituents in ways that are unreasonable. But as you said, there's a lot of people involved in constituencies, and there's a lot of trade-offs made. And that's part of, and I think we got transparency, right? We have these meetings, every meeting is open.
And the website.
And the website.
The first community meeting, I think I mentioned on Tuesday night, but it is coming up May 18th and we're getting those flyers out.
What information will we have at that meeting?
Not much more than
No, I
tonight,
think-
but it'll be this presentation for a broader audience. with the
Well,
intent.
no, actually, no, yeah, we're, it really would be kind of, we'll have more existing condition information, let everyone know that we have to study both options, like be a lot of more, to be transparent, this is the process, this is what we're gonna be looking at. We'll be studying both enrollments, we should have far more information about both sites, right? We'll have a traffic study from, Fox Hill, so we'll understand, the level and how bad the traffic currently is there. Obviously with the lower enrollment, the impact is less, with the greater enrollment, it would be whatever. We'll do a little analysis there. And then we are trying to sketch out ballpark. This is sort of what 325 would look like. This is sort of what 640 could look like, but it's a discussion and it's really almost to solicit feedback at that point.
Is that a WebEx meeting or is it here?
So it was,
So it's both.
No, it's not here. It's
No.
only
it's only
WebEx?
Yeah, yeah.
That's unfortunate. But you can reach the most people, I think.
And
that
we're
was the
just
goal.
finding it really is the best, really the best way to engage the community.
And that was during when you're gonna have their whole staff and everything.
Yeah, and it puts all the participants on the same footing, right? So participation, interaction.
I didn't believe it. Stephen here. Does anyone have anything great or something you want to talk about as it relates?
Before David goes, if you
Yeah.
don't mind, sorry, there is a comment on here. I'll read most of it, then paraphrase. It does say it might be out of scope for this discussion, and then it was to talk about maybe the land to be used for fields, turf fields, or other facilities. There's a lack of sport field facilities in Burlington. So I just don't know if we want to touch on that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think as it relates to the visioning, as it relates to the visioning and kind of blue sky ideas or anything that you can think about or have questions about educationally, the what a school could look like. David, do you want to bait these guys with some questions or ideas that
while you're still here, we don't
Yeah,
need to.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry. It was my sound.
It's
somehow
more
wasn't
about
working.
fields. It's about fields.
The question was about using, putting a smaller capacity school and have more field space for town use.
Yeah.
Oh, field space. Yeah. Yeah. So I know within the design patterns, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on athletic facilities or fields. That's certainly part of the template that we would be looking at. That's kind of it's a given, but it was more of a focus on sort of the educational aspects of how the schools are working. Is that, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I think some of it was advocating for a smaller school so they can get more fields at the Fox Hill.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Mhm.
But again, the footprint of the school may determine how many floors I mean, there's a lot of different permutations to this. I do think in some of your placement of the building as determined by the wetlands may allow for outdoor spaces to be developed. And then with the memorial and with the middle school, we ended up doing those sort of separately to the project. So the same builder did the turf field at the middle school, but it wasn't reimbursed and wasn't part of the project. But the economy in 2008 was such that when we bid the memorial school, it actually came in $6 million under what we proposed. Now schools are coming in over. So it's just, it all, there's again, lots of different things. David, I think one of the things that I don't think contributes to the Fox Hill being renovated is the design was sort of it wasn't very flexible at all in terms of the snowflake. It was a designer who
Sure. Yeah, it's a very distinctive design.
Delivered one way. So again, I think what I appreciated with your presentation is the idea that this school needs to last 40 or 50 years. And educational thinking may evolve in that time. And we still want the school to be relevant in 30 or 40 years and not designed like a snowflake. So I just, so I appreciated that part of your presentation.
Well, and I mean, we could all echo even the 70s with open concept plans, right?
This building.
Like I don't know what people were thinking, both architects and educators both at the time, right? But we've all learned from what not to do, I think. And what was it? Yeah. Well, you know, I think ideally that we've learned a lot, right? And we can grow both from an educational perspective. No one was talking about social emotional learning 5 years ago, right? I mean, like it's really, things have really truly shifted, and understanding that students do learn differently and that we need to be able to have differentiated learning and all of those things. So providing the flexibility is really important. I'm not saying portable walls or no walls, because I have all kinds of flexible opportunities, because we know acoustics is fresh air. Like, how did you even get heat and fresh air into these buildings in the 70s? You want to see the boiler room? No, I know. That's what I'm saying, right? So I think technology has helped us. I think lessons learned. You know, our firm began in 1978. We have a lot of lessons learned, and I think educators have a lot of lessons learned, right? But no one does know.
And then again, I would just go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I would say too that, I mean, one thing that we have going for us is that there's no other state that has an entity like the MSBA that has done as thoughtful a job of trying to create a framework for approaching the design of schools and thinking about the educational underpinnings of them. It's so haphazard in many of the other states that I work with. It's pretty, surprising. But I do think that the MSBA and the fact that there are so many architects working through that MSBA process that are inspiring each other, informing each other. We can go look at the different projects, at what's working, what's not working. There's a lot we can benefit from, I think.
Yeah, thank you. And no one can predict what education is gonna look like in 50 years. Who knows? Maybe we'll all be remote.
No.
The more-
That's not good for education.
No, I know. But you know, it's very hard to anticipate, and you can just look back and say what worked, what has been the true test of time, and what hasn't worked, and how we can learn from that. And we do it all the time. Yeah, we should probably.
Just a quick comment on transparency. Somebody, Catherine, thank you for putting the website link in the chat, but for those in the room that maybe can't see it, it's foxhillbuildingproject.com. There is a form there to submit questions. Please know that doesn't go to a black hole. It goes directly to us, and we collect those and formulate and get those out to the team for the most appropriate response. But not just to the individual. If there's a recurring theme or questions that are critical to the project, it helps inform the frequently asked questions. So we can also, and that's a document that we include on the website too. So that over time, we develop a sense or a common theme of folks' concerns and questions. And so we can put that back out in the public. And you're right, we do have that community forum scheduled for the night of the 18th of May. So these meetings are all open. Please feel free to email us, call us, submit questions on the website, and attend these meetings so the voice can be heard.
And in multiple languages. So-
Yeah.
That's right.
I think 15, yeah,
15.
11 at least.
And Steve, obviously, I'm assuming you're gonna do this as well. During the forum, you'll sort of talk about the role of an OPM, the role of a designer, and so people better understand the expertise that you all bring to this.
Absolutely. Yep. In the beginning, introductions, project team, kind of what the MSB is, how the funding, really quickly, really high level, but yep, certainly a description of the key players and what we all do, and a little bit of an education on what the process is, because while it is a really well thought out and well developed program, there's a lot of folks that just don't even know it exists. So we're happy to teach people along the way too.
We probably should.
I mean, the meetings have been open.
No, I mean, all of this is really helpful, and we come to this with absolutely no preconceived notions, ideas. We worked in one community and we've done multiple schools, and they all look totally different, right? So it's what is important to you all. We just want to make sure that we're hearing, listening, responding, providing all of the options, and making sure that you're making the best decision for you. And by doing so, what does it look like educationally, financially, the impact to the neighborhoods, the site, and all of this should be an improvement to what you have, right? So the last thing we want is for people to feel that this is a disservice to the community.
Yeah, and there's no bonus for a bigger school or smaller
No.
school. Like I said, they'll design a great school. Dorn Whittier will take us through the process well, and we'll make sure the building isn't a drag on the great educators who are inside of it. So that's the plan, and you guys have to live with this decision for time. So that's what's important.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Melissa, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
See you on the
Thanks, everybody.
18th.
Is there anything?
We have a regular school committee.
Yes.
We have the whole calendar is out. I don't have it. in front of me.
The date on the 2nd, on the 16th.
Okay, then we have school committee, school building. Yeah. Oh, yeah, great.
I have it. Does anyone want it? Calendar, want it, please?
Was just, note that a lot of these meetings
Yeah, some of
are
the future.
internal.
Internal,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
you still have it.
But like, I wouldn't go too nuts about this is
Yeah.
beyond the sentence.
Just the community meetings are the sort of open forum.
I mean, the school building meetings are open meetings.
Yeah.
It's still,
Okay. And is this also on the?
people are still on.
Oh.
This was, we just got this, but like,